Thank you. So first, just a wee bit about the Volunteer Organisers Network. We're a friendly, welcoming peer-to-peer support group for anyone within Scotland's heritage sector who works with volunteers or would like to begin working with volunteers. We're part of the Make Your Mark in Volunteering campaign, which aims to increase the number and diversity of heritage volunteers in Scotland. For more information on joining your Make Your Mark, if you're not already a member, then you can visit makeyourmark.scot. We also welcome new members joining us on the VON group. And if you're interested in taking part, please do contact us via hello@makeyourmark.scot. Now on to today's event. We're pleased to welcome Ali Amabiska, Community and Discovery Manager, and Callie Wilson, Discovery Ranger from the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland, or RZSS for short. Ali and Callie join us today to share about Nature Connections, RZSS's inclusive group volunteering programme, where participants can build a support network, learn about the zoo, and connect with nature through immersive outdoor experiences. As mentioned before, we'll be having a question and answer session after the presentation. So if you can hold any questions till the end, that would be grand. And now I'll hand it over to Ali and Callie.
Hi, everybody. If you wait just a moment so that I can share my screen and get going. All right. Just a minute. There we go. All right. Does everybody see that all right? Okay.
Great, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Joanna. All right. Once again, as Joanna said, my name is Ali, and I'm the Community and Discovery Manager for RZSS. I'm based mostly out of Edinburgh Zoo. And I oversee the volunteers as well as community programs and on-site non-formal education programs. So we do a lot of really cool work over there. Really quick, I'll let Callie introduce herself as well, and then we'll get started.
Hello, I'm Callie. So I'm one of the Discovery Rangers here at Edinburgh Zoo. So I'm part of the informal education side as well. I do a lot of the public engagement with visitors and a lot to do with volunteers as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so our volunteers are really, obviously, as I'm sure they are for your guys, all of your facilities, very, very important part of us being able to do our job and being able to connect with people. And they've become even more important in recent years. So really quick, before I get into kind of what the program itself is, I want to go a little bit into what the zoo is trying to do. So we last year got a brand new mission statement, which is creating a world where nature is protected, valued, and loved. It sounds great in theory. That's what we're trying to do every day. And to do that, we have to make connections with people. So it's not just about the animals. It's not just about the conservation. And we're really lucky that our current CEO really shares that belief that the people are the most important part of making our mission happen. So we did a new strategic plan last year. And one of the great things that came out of this strategic plan was that there was a huge emphasis on the connections with people, more so than I think ever before. And it was really, really exciting for us. So you can see our three main pledges that we're working on. Two of them focus primarily on making connections with people, on getting people involved, getting the public and communities surrounding us involved. And that's really exciting for me and for my team. But it also made us really take a look at the program that we had for volunteering and where we had barriers and where we could break down those barriers. So I'm going to give you kind of a heads up of what our program was. And then we're going to go into why that wasn't enough for us. So this is our volunteer program. As of right now, we have 213 active volunteers. And of those 213, 37% of them have now attended our Nature Connections sessions, which is really great percentage. And that will make more sense in a little bit. So before Nature Connections came about, there were really only a few different ways to volunteer. So we have our engagement volunteers, which are by far the highest percentage of volunteers. Most people who come to the zoo, this is what they want to do. They want to go out and they want to connect with the public. They want to make the public's experience fun and memorable. They want to share their stories and the conservation that we do at the zoo with the public. We also have our gardens team. Our gardens volunteers are pruning and planting and digging and doing all of that manual labor, helping our gardens staff. And we have our education team, and they're helping with education and community sessions, with our outdoor learning sessions. So what you might notice about all of these is that they're all very oriented towards people that are able-bodied and mostly neurotypical, people that are outgoing and comfortable with the public, and people that can be independent and autonomous. And that was what our volunteer base was, is we have a really great number of volunteers who were all right into that category. But then we realized that there's a lot of people that don't fit into that category that still are really passionate about conservation, really passionate about nature, really passionate about getting out there and helping. And I think what really brought this to the forefront were two different people. So one of them is Helen, and I am going to use her real name because she has actually done a whole blog article for us, and I've put the link at the bottom there if you want to read her whole blog article. So Helen has autism, and she wrote an entire article about kind of going through that struggle with the things that she has to overcome to be able to be an engagement volunteer, because that's what she does, is she's an engagement volunteer. And so Helen is someone that before she started volunteering, I had several meetings with. We really worked together to get her comfortable with what the kind of traditional volunteering position was. And she still does that. She's also has mobility issues. So she does move around a lot with either a walker or a scooter. And so she's a great example of someone who took the traditional route, but still has to overcome a lot of things, whether it's her communication concerns, her sensory challenges, or her socialization challenges. And so she loves being an engagement volunteer, but she also loves to come and talk to me about how we can always be improving. And so between her and kind of what she saw her limitations as, and this next volunteer, that was kind of the onus for us, saying, how can we take our volunteer program and turn it on its head and make it something that is more accessible and accommodating to a wider audience? And so the second person who really came about and made us think about what our platform was is Mary, not a real name here, because I have not asked her permission to fully share her story. So Mary came in and she interviewed with us, and she was so unbelievably passionate, so unbelievably like invested in wanting to help with animals. We always ask them what their favorite animal is when they do the volunteer interviews, and her answer was not an animal at the zoo, or not a kind of animal at the zoo. It was a specific animal at the zoo. So it wasn't the giraffes, it was Arrow the giraffe, our specific giraffe. Vass, you might remember him. He liked you a lot. So she had this passion, but she had a lot of additional needs, and those additional needs made it to where, when we first brought her on board, we basically gave her a ranger as an aide the entire time she was doing her volunteer shifts. So Callie or one of our other rangers would go around with her and do her shifts. And this became really tough because we realized that what Mary really wanted was the socialization aspect. So she didn't necessarily want to speak to the public. She wanted to share her passion with the ranger, and that was keeping the ranger from doing their job and talking to the public. So we thought, how can we have Mary still helping out at the zoo, still sharing her passion, but not in that traditional way because she did not fit into that traditional hole of this is what our volunteers do. And so between Helen and Mary, we brainstormed and we came up with a program that we called Nature Connections. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass it to Callie for a little bit to go a little more in depth into what our Nature Connections program is. So Callie?
Hello. I'll lean forward a bit because I think my microphone's not that great, but can you hear me okay? Fabulous. So as Ali mentioned before, Nature Connections, it's an inclusive group program and we focus on immersive outdoor experiences. So just trying to get as many people involved as possible. But when we first started the program, we had a couple of aims, and I'll go into how things have kind of changed now. But the initial aims for the group, it was to facilitate connections between our volunteers, but also connect them with the wildlife we have on site, as well as the zoo animals as well. We wanted to introduce more people into the world of volunteering, especially, I think, post-COVID times as well. People were a little bit apprehensive about being in such a busy place as Edinburgh Zoo, definitely. We wanted to have a space where people could build their confidence. So instead of kind of being thrown straight into volunteering, they've got a little chance, kind of a stepping stone. And then obviously we wanted to increase the accessibility of the program, so get more people volunteering with us. So our sessions, we do mainly focus on outdoor activities. We are obviously in Scotland, so sometimes we do have to go inside, dodge the weather a little bit, but the outdoors is quite important. We want to get everyone kind of outside exploring the zoo as much as possible. We do focus on group activities, so it's that social aspect. We want people working together, meeting new volunteers, kind of mingling with their peers. They have to be immersive, so we want everyone kind of giving it their all, being fully involved with all of the activities, but importantly, accessible and inclusive. So we consider where we're doing the sessions, because we are on a very big hill as well. So we want to be able to accommodate for everyone, so keeping that in mind whenever we plan something. But we do have a very heavy focus on citizen science projects. So there's something that I love to do in general, but it's mainly because they're a fantastic way to introduce people to the animals we have on site, but mainly the native wildlife as well. So we don't just focus on kind of the zoo animals, the ones that are in front of us. We do utilize them as much as possible, but it's really, really nice to connect people with nature around them as well, that they might go home and see in their back gardens as well. So they're great for that. They help us conservation-wise. So we've got lots of different projects like the Bayaza Spotted on Site. So we're helping contribute to them, and also it kind of helps with wider science projects. So volunteers really feel like they are involved in a project, something kind of bigger. So whilst Nature Connections is a different type of volunteering, it's not the traditional engagement volunteering, our volunteers still have a huge impact on everything across our site. So number one would be with nature. So with all of these different surveys that we've been doing, but also making enrichment for our zoo animals. So we've got a very smiley group making some stuff for Valentine's Day with our otters. But we do stuff out in the local community as well. So taking a group outside is quite important. It kind of helps show that we aren't just kind of volunteers on site. We do help out locally as well. Helps with our vision as well, connecting with different groups. But we did a litter pick on one of our local greenways. And this is a weird one that I've included, but all of the weird and wonderful things we do as well. So I've just headed it as etc. But this is specifically, we did penguin stick picks. So we cleared all of the debris and sticks from our penguin enclosure, because penguins, they do like to investigate the world kind of beak first. So they do eat some things that they shouldn't really be eating. But what we did is we cleared the area, and it did mean that we cleared the way for the highest ranking penguin in the world, which is quite fabulous. This is Niels Olaf over there. So we do lots of weird and wonderful things, but it's all having a really positive impact across the site. So I did mention the aims that we had at the start of Nature Connections when we first kind of decided to make the group. But overall, it's kind of grown arms and legs. It's had even more of an impact than we could have possibly imagined. So the first is with inclusivity and accessibility. So we've managed to create a space that is inclusive and accessible. We cater to quite a lot of different needs. So it does mean we kind of assess how we're going to do different sessions depending on who's signed up for them. So one of the big things that Ali did mention are different volunteers. They're coming for different reasons. So it might not necessarily be to connect with nature. They might be coming for this social aspect. So doing things like having 2 members of staff can be quite important. So we've got someone that might be running the majority of the session, and then someone for our volunteers like Mary that might want to just have a bit of a chat, have someone to listen and kind of update basically. So she's still getting her social aspect out of volunteering, still getting what she wants out of it. We do also break up our sessions. So we'll start often indoors, outline what we're going to do for the day so people can decide what's best for them. If we need to change anything, we've got that opportunity. We do tend to do one overall theme and then break it into little sections. So we might be doing 4 mini activities rather than one that requires quite a lot of focus to do the whole time. So hopefully there's something for everyone in each session. That's the plan anyway. So the next big thing that's come out of Nature Connections is the confidence that we've seen with our volunteers. So this is one of my favourite examples here. There's actually two of our volunteers that this applies to, but we've seen a lot of people start off volunteering being really quite shy is maybe not the right word, but a little bit unsure of where they fit in. So both the volunteers in these pictures, they're both engagement volunteers, but definitely with a preference for different parts of the zoo. So neither of them were a big fan of chimpanzees, which is very fair, but basically they were unsure about how to engage with the public, with visitors when they were in these areas, so they'd be actively avoiding them. But we hosted a chimp session for Nature Connections, and the first picture is us doing a sort of ID game. So we're getting to know the chimpanzees we have on site, and they're working as a group to do that. So it's a little bit of a quiz for them. We did then make enrichment for them, and we got to throw that into the enclosure as well. But I got a lovely email from one of our volunteers afterwards, basically saying how he felt comfortable going to engage with people with the chimpanzees now. So it gave him the boost he needed and gave him even more of a boost because a few weeks later he did help us with our World Chimp Day celebrations. So he probably spent about 4 hours for an entire day engaging with the public, talking about chimpanzees. So I think it's a really nice kind of full circle moment to show off one of our volunteers that it did give him the confidence that he needed. Oh, and this is, I think, one of the best things. We were chatting about this earlier that came out of Nature Connections. So we've had a lot of peer mentors come out of the group. So initially we had one volunteer, and he's been with us for quite, I think, over 15 years, possibly, being an engagement volunteer. So he would be out and about all of the time, engaging with visitors. He does also have additional support needs. So he felt he was a perfect person to be able to bring more people into the program. So we started with this wonderful volunteer as our peer mentor, but kind of by accident, a lot of volunteers took it upon themselves to also engage with our new volunteers. So it's been fantastic that we can have these peer mentors, even if it wasn't planned. They've taken our new volunteers kind of under their wing, showed them how they engage, and it's been great because we can have not only staff support, but peer support as well. So we're getting people with similar needs engaging and able to volunteer. They're kind of sharing similar experiences. And yeah, it's been fantastic for visitor engagement as well as connecting with nature and all of the local and not local wildlife like our lions and such as well. But overall, we've been able to connect our volunteers with each other. So they've built quite strong bonds. I think some friendships have even come out of it. We've just sent a survey round and there's a good number of people that have said they've made firm friends, which is really, really good to hear. So they've built these bonds, they're a lot more confident, they have a support system. So say they were out volunteering and they weren't enjoying themselves, they do have people that they can fall back on that aren't just staff, but people to support them when they're out, share stories, share experiences as well.
All right, lovely. No, yeah, there was, it's fine. My bad, Callie. All right, I'm going to take over again, Allie here, and talk a little bit about evaluation and how we kind of determine success of this program. So as Callie said, we had a lot of observational impacts, so things that we saw that were happening. We're especially proud, as she mentioned, of the kind of mentorship that came out of it. We didn't realize how many of our traditional volunteers were going to want to do the nature connections as well. And so that was kind of a happy accident of what happened, is that we found if you make these programs, these sessions, a way that kind of caters to the whole audience, but is accessible to everyone, then everyone will come. And so it's not separating and differentiating. It's just making it so that everyone can have a different but similar experience. And that's where the peer mentors came in, and it was really beautiful to see. So we have done some surveys of our current batch of that 78 that we mentioned, people that have participated in Nature Connections, and they've said some really wonderful things about us. So this is some of I just pulled a few things that really popped out to me. Some of the surveys were anonymous and some of them were willing to share their names. So you'll see there's some names after some of them and not after others. So Sally, one of our volunteers, said, "I was very amazed at how inclusive the sessions were and accessible to everyone. The staff/discovery rangers have always been helpful and the sessions have always been fun." An anonymous respondee said it was a chance to learn more about local conservation and have more interaction with other volunteers. And that's something that really came across a lot, because sometimes I think as much as we do try to do kind of different events, we do coffee mornings and things where the volunteers can mingle, their regular daily shifts, a lot of times they have their morning meeting and then they go off and they do their own thing. And so having this other way for them to work together and communicate and be social in an important and impactful way has been really something that they've really picked up on and really noticed. Another thing that was said was that they liked that it was a low pressure environment within which to engage with others, that it feels safe. And that's really amazing as well. So one of the big reasons that we brought about Nature Connections as well was not just for those volunteers that have additional needs, but also for volunteers that maybe didn't have prior volunteering experience, that maybe we're a little nervous about going out and interacting with the public. And so that we have quite a few people who start with Nature Connections and build that confidence, get to know the zoo, get to know some of the other volunteers before they move into the other kind of more traditional style volunteering. And so we've seen that confidence building be such an important part of the program. And then the last quote that I pulled was the diverse range of that they like the diverse range of volunteers who share the same love of the zoo and the opportunity to see familiar faces. And that came from Fiona. And so having that kind of feedback is really important to us to show that we are moving in the right direction and making sure that we are being engaging, but also inclusive. So if you want to, sorry, the next few slides are going to get a little statisticky, but this is kind of our hard evidence of what we are doing. Oops, wrong one. Okay. So we mentioned at the beginning, or I think Callie mentioned at the beginning, that one of our objectives was to focus on nature connectedness. So that's where zoo, we are trying to get people connected to nature. We're trying to get people to feel immersed by nature and feel like they're a part of nature. so that they want to protect it. And so one of the things we always look for and we always evaluate is how connected are the participants of our programs to nature. And obviously a program called Nature Connections, we hope that that's the case. So what you're seeing here are some answers to their program, the survey that we sent out related to nature connectedness. And what we do is we ask them this question on how connected they are to nature before they start volunteering. So before they ever come to a volunteer session, before they ever do an induction, we ask them to fill out a survey. And then we've also asked them to fill out a survey recently to try to test the difference between how they're feeling when it comes to their own nature connection. And you can see on the graphs that there's a clear difference. And then also, if you're looking at the t-test that we did, for those of you that are a little more interested in the statistics side, the number we're looking at is we're looking at the P1 tail test, and it's showing close. It's still a little bit, but it is showing very, very close to being statistically significant. It's not yet, but we're getting there. What is interesting and what is very statistically significant is when we look at their connection to RZSS and their connection to the zoo, and how much that changes by them being a part of this program. And so I looked at a few different statistics. So obviously when they first start volunteering, they're not going to feel that connected to RZSS yet. Some of them do, because some of them have been long-term members or have come to the zoo as kids, and they do have that connection. And obviously our hope is by volunteering that they are building more connection to the zoo. And they are. So if you look at that P1 tail test, it is extremely statistically significant. So for those who don't maybe have that evaluative background, if it's under 0.05, then it's usually considered statistically significant. Just very basic. And so you can see it's extremely statistically significant. But I have also looked at other numbers. So I've looked at past surveys, so from like 2 years ago, just post-COVID, how connected you were feeling to the zoo versus now, and those who have participated in nature connections, also extremely statistically significant. So it's really amazing to see how, and we can hope it's not just this program, but how this program has really increased our entire volunteer base's connection to the zoo. Which in turn hopefully will increase more as we continue on with the program, that connection to nature. So it's really exciting to see as we grow. And we are continuing to grow. We are still a fairly new program. We've only been in existence for a little over a year, the Nature Connections program. So it's still very new. And so there's a lot that we can still grow. And there are a few different areas that we are trying to grow and expand into and change and improve. One of the areas is a consistency of leadership. So some of the feedback that we got, and this makes complete sense, is that they wish that it wasn't a different person every time, because we have to do it based on who's available. And as some of you who've worked with additional needs know, consistency is very important to some people. And so we're working on ways, we only have the capacity we have, I'm sure a lot of you are in that same boat, but we're looking at ways that we can add that consistency to the program. We also are looking to expand conservation connections and impact, because some of them feel like they're making a big difference. Some of them but some of them I think are still struggling to find that feeling that what they're doing is making a difference. So it's kind of across the board. If you look at what their feelings are on it, we're working to partner more with our actual conservation team, and hopefully get them involved in some of the projects that the conservation team is doing as well, not just our on-site programs. And so that we're hoping will really increase that connectivity to the conservation that's happening and help them feel like they're really making a difference. We also want to increase inclusivity and accessibility. We want to break even more barriers. So all of our staff are sighted guide trained. So all of our staff can have had multiple trainings to work with people with different visual impairments. And that came into fruition when we had a visually impaired placement student last year. And we want to be able to continue to expand into some of those different groups. We are looking at different trainings. We have a few scheduled to get our staff all up to speed on basic BSL, so that we can work with more hearing impaired individuals. We're working really closely with our accessibility and inclusion manager to see what other barriers that we can continue to break. Because while we realize that this is a great start, we also realize that we haven't made it completely inclusive. There's still plenty of people that can't come in and volunteer yet. And so we want to continue to expand and continue to figure out how we can break down those barriers. And of course, we want to increase capacity and recruitment. So right now, as you know, I think this goes right into the consistency of leadership, is that we only have so many staff. And so we can only run this program so many times a month. And, you know, one of the biggest complaints that people have is, oh, we wish it ran more. We wish we could do it more. And right now we do it twice a month. We would love to be able to do it more than that. So hopefully at some point we can, and that's the hope, that as we grow, we can show that we need more staffing, that we can increase our capacity, and then we can also increase our recruitment and get even more people in to be able to work, because we do try to have 2 staff at every session if we can, just to because there are people with different motivations, people with different needs. You know, mentioning Mary again, she loves to have a chat and show pictures of animals to you, which is wonderful. That's how she engages, but that makes it hard to then also continue to interact with everybody else. So it's nice to have as many people as possible, but as I'm sure a lot of you can probably relate to, we don't always have that capacity. So that is kind of in a nutshell what our Nature Connections program is. And so I would love to, oh, I forgot about this one part. So there was one part that I did want to add, which is we have one aspect of us trying to expand our capacity is we have expanded out into our other sister zoo, the Highland Wildlife Park. And we've done it in a very different way because they're a different zoo. They don't have nearly, so they actually have a lot smaller volunteer base, as it's a kind of very remote location. It's up in the Highlands in Kingussie. And so it's really hard for them to do the same thing that we were doing here. So what they did instead is they have twisted the Nature Connections program to focus on actual community groups. So they bring in community groups like the Wildlife Wombles and others to do basically like volunteering mornings. So they do a lot of the same activities that we're doing, but they just do it, and they're targeting a lot of the same audiences that we're targeting, but they're just doing it in a slightly different format. And I think that's important to show that a lot of these things that we've talked about can be tweaked to kind of fit your own institution's needs. So it's not necessarily a set in stone format. So you want to find what works for your specific institution. And so that is in a nutshell what we have with our lovely program. So I'd love to turn it over to questions now, if anybody has any.
Thank you so much, Ali and Callie. That was amazing. I might be sneaky and jump in with a question myself first, if that all right. I'm so fascinated by this program and just that change in mindset, really, instead of saying, you know, like this person doesn't fit our volunteer role. What can we do to provide a volunteering experience to this individual? And that's just, it's so refreshing and something I really want to take on board as well, and think about things in that different sort of way. So thank you so much for sharing this amazing program. I had some like practical questions that you've answered some of them already, but one I was wondering is, are there any restrictions, or is there any like recruitment process? Do you have, for example, like an age restriction in place, or any recruitment process that individuals need to go through before that they could take part as a Nature Connections volunteer?
So we do, and we do realize that our recruitment process in and of itself is a barrier. So we are working at looking at ways that we can lift that as well. But right now they go through the traditional application process of everyone else. So they do fill out the application, they do come to an interview. We have had people who have reached out to us and said for whatever reason that they're struggling to interview because of X, Y, and Z. And so we've tried to accommodate that as much as we can. We've had volunteers that come with aides. We do have the age restriction of 18. We are hoping to change that at some point. Right now it's our insurance, but I am working on a business plan to try to show the benefits of youth volunteering. And so it's an area I want to get into. But right now we do have that 18 age restriction. And then as far as other restrictions, we just really do it on a case-by-case basis of what we think our capacity can handle. So we do ask about additional needs in our application and then try to work with those specific needs in mind. And that's the best we can do right now. And we do realize that there are still barriers with our application process. And so that's something that we're looking at.
Fascinating. Does anyone want to raise a digital hand and come in? Oh, I see Jackie Fox. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, hi, Ali. Thank you so much for that. I'm following on really from what Joanna was saying. So I'm wondering if there are circumstances where you need to turn down a prospective volunteer because of their support needs and how you and the team manage that.
Yeah, so we have turned down a few, not very many. We have turned down a few, or we've had talks with them. Usually we have, if it's because of support needs, we'll have individual talks with them about what we can do and what we can't do. And we try to make it kind of a group decision. So it's not just us saying, no, you can't come volunteer, but it's kind of a, can you do this? So for instance, we had someone apply who was really, really keen to come. She came to our interest session with her mom, but she had so much social anxiety that she couldn't do the interview, which we said, okay, well, we can work around that. But, the options we have for volunteering are all social. So there's not, even in the safe space of Nature Connections, there's still that social aspect, so if you don't want that social aspect, right now we may not be the place for you. Now, is that to say that we won't ever be? No, as we grow, we can potentially have other opportunities, but right now, for someone who struggles to talk to anybody that they don't know, we don't necessarily have the capacity to accommodate them, because the Nature Connections, even though it's very low stakes, we try to make it a safe space. We don't force anybody to talk. It's still, you're surrounded by people, you're in that very social setting, and that can be a struggle for some people. So this isn't the end all. This is not the perfect solution, and we continue to learn and grow. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else we've turned away because we haven't been able to accommodate needs, and I can't think of anybody else. Can you, Callie?
No, not in the last year, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
The volunteer you did mention that came with her mum, she managed to come to a Nature Connection session without her mum once, which was quite a big step for her. So it was a nice, gentle one. So a lot of the time we do, maybe a little bit of time pays off with people. But I can't think of anyone that's turned away.
Yeah, and we all the team all has autism awareness training and has a lot of experience in working with different needs. And so if we have a volunteer that maybe needs a little bit of space or needs to just have a one-on-one chat, we try to have that capacity as well and be able to do that to the best of our ability.
Thanks. That's really helpful, really interesting. Thank you.
Becky, I think you were the next one with your hand up.
Thank you. And first of all, I just want to say thank you so much. It was super interesting, and there's some overlaps with one of our projects at the minute. So lots to learn from through that project. So that's really helpful. I just wanted to ask about, I know you mentioned an interest day there, but what sort of processes that you have for training and inductions of Nature Connection volunteers? Would they go through the same process as your normal engagement volunteers first, like training wise, and then where it's lots of different separate tasks each session, and just how that works training wise and making sure they've got like the relevant things they need to know beforehand?
Yeah, actually, we don't have any training requirements. They do have to go through the interview process and all, application process. But when it comes to like an induction and training, we don't currently have any because they're not individually interacting with the public in capacity, basically. So once they're accepted as a volunteer, they can attend Nature Connections. And that has actually been another thing that has allowed a lot of our new volunteers to kind of ease their way in. Because if somebody gets accepted, say a month before the next induction, then they can still go to Nature Connections before their induction starts. So we don't have a formal induction for Nature Connections. We don't want to necessarily have them, do the whole because our induction is a 2-day induction. It's pretty intense. And so we don't necessarily want them to do all of that. And it can kind of be a bit of a barrier as well, we've found. So it's not to say that in the future we might not, but right now with what the program is, we've just basically, once someone's accepted, they can come to a Nature Connections session.
Yep, that makes sense. Thanks for that.
Okay, Christy, did you?
Hi, yes, sorry, I will keep my camera off because my camera isn't working.
Oh, no.
Thank you both. Thank you. That was just, really fascinating, really exciting to hear about the work that you're doing. I was quite interested in just how you sort of think about putting together the different sessions. Obviously, you talked about them being different mini activities, but do you tend to, and obviously that there's a variety within them, but do you kind of respond to the needs of the zoo? Is it ideas? Do volunteers come and say, we'd be really interested in doing a bit more of this? Or so just sort of how you thought about developing your ideas for the session and then balancing the mini activities within the sessions.
Yeah, we do a bit of both. Sometimes, our comms team will say, hey, we really want some Valentine's Day enrichment. Could your Nature Connections team help with that? But sometimes there is, it's just based on other things. Callie, do you want to take this one since you do a lot of the development for this?
Yeah, because it's only really been a year, we have had some wins and some fails with sessions, I will say. But I find it's quite important when we run the sessions to ask people that are there at the time. So I always make sure, like, oh, is there anything that you guys fancy doing? Hedgehogs have come up recently. That's in the works, hopefully. But yeah, kind of getting some feedback from them about what they've enjoyed, what's worked for them as we go along, because I think it helps with the kind of mentoring part as well, that they feel they're involved, that their opinions are taken on boards. But we do, sometimes it's the needs of the zoo, like the penguin stuff and things like that. But usually I go off of what they kind of mention.
Can I be cheeky and ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Just, you mentioned that obviously some sessions have gone back. What sessions have been particularly successful? Like what ones have you gone away being like, that's just done exactly what we were doing?
I would say Big Garden Birdwatch. They love everything with the birds. So this year was a little bit different from the year before, but we normally make bird feeders. We do some sort of bird quiz and then little kind of bird scavenger hunts around the zoo. But weirdly, it worked really well. We have quite maybe older individuals that volunteer with us, so I was a little bit apprehensive. I showed them a smartphone app, so I wasn't sure how they would take it, but that went down like really, really well. They still talk about it. It's the Merlin Bird app. They still talk about it today. So some sessions have surprised me. Others, like we tried to make seed paper, like that you could plant, a little bit of a disaster. So it's just very, very messy sometimes. But I think it was still fun, but it was just, Yeah, trial and error, definitely. But
Yeah.
all of the citizen science stuff seems to go quite well.
They love it. They love the bio blitzes. They love the bird watch. And Callie has done like fungus walks, mushroom walks and butterfly. So, and they've
Yeah.
loved all of that. Camera trapping, they really liked that.
Thank you.
That
Yeah.
sounds fascinating. Can I go off what Kirsty was saying there just about the sessions and planning them? So possibly for Callie, it's kind of a two-parter. Like, how far in advance do you plan what the sessions are going to be? And then also understanding that, you've talked about individuals who are trying to grow their confidence and feel more comfortable coming out and being with people. Do you tell them in advance what everything they're going to do on that session so that they can, if an individual needs to kind of have that knowledge in advance as well?
Last year, it was not last minute planning, but there was less time ahead of sessions to plan. So this year, we want to have a more set plan and get things out a little bit more in advance, because I think you're quite right that some individuals, they want to see what's happening. They want to make a plan for themselves to see which ones they might want to come to, because they might not want to come to all of them, what ones would suit them. But at the start of each session, I know signposting can be quite important. So being able to have that time indoors first, going through what we're going to do. Because we do have like Mary, who were mentioned earlier, she'll quite often, she might go enjoy the first half of a session and then maybe want to do her own thing for the second half. So her knowing what she wants to take part in and when she can leave if she wants to leave, it's quite important. So definitely doing signposting at the start of the session as well. But yeah, we'd like to plan even further in advance this year, I think.
Great, thank you. Jackie, do you want to come in again?
Yeah, me again. Yeah, so it's following on from this planning theme that we're on now. So it's probably a question for Ali. You talked about capacity, and from experience, I know that the planning side of doing this kind of work can take far longer than the actual delivery of it. And I'm just intrigued as to whether you and your team got additional funding, staffing. I can see you shaking your head. How have you managed that capacity and the needs that you have around that kind of planning and delivery within your current resources?
As well as we can is the answer. No, we didn't get any additional funding. It'd be lovely if we did. We don't have any additional staffing. We don't have any dedicated, volunteer staff. So as Callie mentioned, she's a discovery ranger, so she also has other duties. She has to give, public tours and public talks, and there's a lot of other stuff. So when it comes to the planning for programs like this, it can be tricky. We can be trying to kind of squeeze time in where we can, and working as collaboratively as we can, and trying to work as a team. But it absolutely can be tricky. We're hoping in the new year to get a dedicated volunteer person, because right now I oversee the volunteers. So basically I'm the dedicated volunteer person, but I also, as you guys heard from the beginning, oversee many other things. So that is the hope. And when Callie was talking about planning ahead as much as possible and getting everything ready, one of the barriers to that has been capacity. Is that, if you only have, 5 hours of office time in a week, and you also have to be writing a tour and putting data for something else, and it can be tricky. So I think it's just trying to time manage as best we can, and trying to keep them as right now as simple as we can, so they're not too complicated right now. So if it's an enrichment session, we may do a little bit of information, for the otters, for instance, and we may do a little information about the otters. We may do an otter enrichment feed, and then also make enrichment for the comms team. But we keep it really simple as much as we can, to try to minimize the amount of kind of back planning that needs to happen. Hopefully we'll get more capacity, and that will be lovely.
Wouldn't we all like that? But that's great. Thanks, Ali.
Anyone else have any last question before we finish up the session today? Not seeing any hands. No. Well, that's been absolutely fantastic. Ali and Callie, are you happy to take questions after if anyone thinks of anything? If you maybe want to pop the email address in the chat there, because I know for some people you might need some time to kind of digest, and then you might have some questions that come up. I'll probably be emailing you a lot of times because I want to create something similar. That sounds so fab. But just want to say to everyone, thank you so much for joining us today.